The first bell of the day rang across Lincoln High School, echoing through the courtyard filled with laughter, shouts, and the rush of footsteps. Among the noise and color, one boy walked quietly, his backpack hanging loosely from one shoulder. His name was Malik Johnson. He was the new kid, and he already felt like he didn't belong. The way people glanced at him when he walked past, the curious looks, the whispers, told him everything he needed to know. He was different here. Malik was not shy, just reserved. He came from a neighborhood where keeping to yourself was a kind of survival. His mother, Denise, always told him, "Don't waste your energy proving yourself to people who don't see your worth." So, he stayed quiet, focused on his classes, and avoided the loud groups that ruled the hallways. He sat in the back of the classroom, spoke when asked, and spent lunch under the big oak tree near the edge of the school courtyard. That was his space, his small corner of peace in a world that often felt too loud. At first, most people ignored him, but it didn't take long for some to notice. Ryan Carter, the tall, broad-shouldered football player who seemed to own every hallway he walked through, spotted Malik one day sitting alone. Ryan wasn't a bad kid deep down, but he liked being the center of attention, and nothing drew a crowd faster than teasing someone who wouldn't fight back. With a smirk, Ryan pointed Malik out to his friends. "Who's the quiet guy with the old backpack?" He joked. His friend Tyler shrugged. "No idea, he barely talks. Probably scared of his own shadow." The laughter that followed was harmless at first, but laughter has a way of growing sharper with repetition. A few days later, Ryan and his friends sat at a nearby table during lunch. Malik was eating alone as usual, headphones in, lost in his own world. Ryan leaned over and tapped the table. "Yo, new kid," he said, his tone half playful, half provoking. Malik looked up, removing one earbud. "Yeah?" he asked calmly. "You too good to talk to people or what?" Ryan teased, smiling for his audience. Malik shook his head. "Just eating." His voice was soft but steady. Ryan laughed, pretending to be offended. "All right, man, no need to be rude. I was just trying to be friendly." He stretched the word friendly until it sounded like a joke. His friends chuckled. Malik didn't respond. He just went back to his food. Ryan didn't like being ignored. He leaned in closer. "Hey, what's in the notebook?" Malik's hand froze over his notebook. It was something he always carried, a small worn book filled with sketches. Ryan grabbed it before Malik could react. "Yo, check this out." He flipped it open and found pages filled with drawings of boxing gloves, gym rings, and strong, detailed hands wrapped in tape. "You a boxer or something?" Ryan asked with a laugh. "You gonna punch us with your doodles?" His friends cracked up, but Malik's expression didn't change. He quietly reached for the notebook. "Please give it back," he said, still calm. Ryan raised an eyebrow. "Say please louder, champ." Malik took a slow breath and repeated, "Please." Ryan smirked, tossed the notebook onto the floor and said, "There, go pick it up." The cafeteria went silent for a few seconds as Malik bent down, picked up the notebook and walked away without a word. Ryan expected him to fight back or at least shout, but Malik didn't even look angry. He looked like someone who had already learned not to waste energy on people trying to provoke him. That calm silence irritated Ryan more than any insult could. "Yeah, walk away," Ryan called out, but Malik didn't turn around. That night, Malik sat on his bed staring at the notebook. His mother walked in, tired from a double shift, and smiled faintly. "How was school?" she asked. Malik hesitated. "Fine," he lied. Denise sighed. "You don't have to tell me everything, baby, but don't hold it in. I can see when something's bothering you." Malik forced a small smile. "It's nothing, Mom, just school stuff." She nodded slowly, trusting him to open up when he was ready. As she left the room, Malik looked back at his notebook. His father's handwriting was still on the first page. 3 words written years ago. Stay in control. His father, Marcus Johnson, had been a professional boxer. He wasn't a big name, but he was known in the local scene for his discipline and integrity. He taught Malik to box when he was only 7. Those early mornings in their old neighborhood gym were more about focus than fists. "Boxing isn't about anger," his father would say. "It's about balance, learning when to move and when to stay still." Malik had trained for years, competing in small youth tournaments. But when his father passed away suddenly from a heart condition, Malik stopped. He packed away the gloves, the wraps, the speed bag, everything. Boxing had been their connection, and without his father, It felt empty. That night, as he sat in his room, Malik opened the old box under his bed. Inside were his gloves, worn, faded, but still whole. He touched them gently, feeling the leather against his fingertips. For a long time he just sat there holding them. Then, almost without thinking, he wrapped his hands and stood in front of the mirror. His reflection looked tired but determined. He started moving slowly at first. Jab, cross, step back, breathe. His muscles remembered what his heart had tried to forget. Each punch felt like exhaling frustration, each breath like reclaiming a part of himself. Downstairs, Denise heard the faint thuds from his room and smiled sadly. She knew that sound. It was the same rhythm Marcus used to make when he shadowboxed late at night. She whispered to herself, "He's finding his way back." The next morning, Malik felt lighter. The world hadn't changed, but he had. He walked through the school gates with his head a little higher. People still whispered, but their words bounced off him. He wasn't walking to prove anything. He was walking with purpose. During gym class, the coach announced a charity sports event coming up next week. "We'll have different activities," he said, "including a boxing exhibition. Volunteers, raise your hands." A few boys did, mostly athletes from the football team. Malik hesitated, but then slowly raised his hand. The coach smiled. "All right, new face." Good to see confidence. The room went quiet. Ryan turned around with an amused look. "You, seriously?" His friends laughed, whispering to each other. Malik just nodded. "Yeah." His voice was calm, but his eyes had a quiet fire. The coach didn't notice the tension. "That's great, Malik. We'll pair you up soon." After class, Ryan caught up with him in the hallway. "So you really think you can box?" he said, stepping in front of Malik. "You think just because you drew some gloves in your notebook you're tough?" Malik didn't respond. Ryan pushed a little further. "You don't talk much, do you?" "Guess that's because you got nothing to say." Malik looked him in the eye and said evenly, "Maybe I just don't waste words." Ryan blinked, surprised by the calm confidence in Malik's tone. Before he could say anything else, Malik walked past him. For the first time, Ryan didn't have a comeback. That night, Malik went back to the garage. He practiced until his arms ached and his legs trembled. Every punch hit the air with precision, not anger. He wasn't training for Ryan or anyone else. He was training to remind himself that strength wasn't about fists or pride. It was about staying steady when the world tried to shake you. By the end of the week, rumors spread that the quiet new kid was going to be in the boxing demo. Some students were curious. Others laughed. Ryan acted like he didn't care, but deep down, something about Malik's calmness unsettled him. Friday afternoon, as Malik was leaving school, Ryan called out, "Hey, champ." Malik turned. Ryan smirked. "You sure you want to do this? You might embarrass yourself in front of the whole school." Malik's expression didn't change. "If I do, at least I'll still show up." His words were soft, but they hit hard. Ryan's smile faded for just a second. Malik walked away. That night, Malik sat by his window looking out at the stars. The gloves hung beside his bed, ready for tomorrow's training. He thought about his father, about his mother's strength, and about every quiet moment he chose peace over anger. He whispered, "I'm not fighting them, Dad. I'm fighting to stay true to who I am." The next morning, when he walked into school, people looked at him differently, not because he was louder or tougher, but because there was something unshakable in the way he carried himself. Malik Johnson, the quiet new kid everyone laughed at, was no longer invisible. He was the calm before the storm. The sound of sneakers echoed across the gym floor. The smell of old sweat and floor polish filled the air as students watched from the bleachers. It was Friday afternoon, and everyone knew what was coming. The charity sports day was only a week away, and the sign-up board for the boxing exhibition was all anyone could talk about. On the top of the list were two names that caught everyone's attention: Ryan Carter and Malik Johnson. Nobody expected Malik to keep his name on the list. Most thought he'd back out quietly, the way new kids usually did when things got too serious. But Malik didn't. Every morning he showed up early to gym class. Every afternoon he stayed behind, practicing footwork, breathing, and precision. His movements were clean, measured, and deliberate. It wasn't about aggression, it was about control. Ryan, on the other hand, treated the upcoming exhibition like entertainment. He bragged in the locker room. "This is going to be fun," he said, laughing with his teammates. "I'll go easy on him for the first round just to make it interesting." His friends laughed, slapping him on the back. Ryan smiled, but somewhere deep inside he felt a hint of something he didn't want to admit. Uncertainty. Every time he saw Malik walking through the hallway, calm and focused, it unsettled him. Malik didn't look scared. He looked ready. By Wednesday, whispers filled the cafeteria. "You think Ryan's gonna destroy him?" one student asked. "Come on, it's Malik," another replied. "He's quiet, but there's something about him." Even teachers had begun to notice the tension. It wasn't just a boxing exhibition anymore. It was becoming a test of pride. That afternoon, Malik was walking toward the courtyard when he heard laughter behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Ryan's voice was hard to miss. "Yo, champ," Ryan called. "Where's your trophy?" "Gonna draw it in your notebook first." The group of boys laughed. Malik stopped and turned slowly, looking Ryan straight in the eye. "You still talking?" he asked quietly. The simplicity of his response caught everyone off guard. Ryan frowned. "You think you're funny?" Malik shook his head. "No, just tired." The words hit harder than Ryan expected. The group fell silent for a second before Ryan, trying to recover, stepped closer. "You better not be getting smart with me." Malik didn't move. His voice was steady. "You keep saying I'm scared. But the only one who talks this much is the one who's afraid of silence." For a moment, even Ryan didn't know what to say. There was something in Malik's eyes, a mix of patience and quiet strength, that made him hesitate. Then, pushing through his own discomfort, Ryan shoved Malik lightly in the chest. "Watch yourself." Malik didn't react. He didn't flinch or raise his hands. He just looked at Ryan and said, "You should save that energy for the ring." Then he walked away. That evening, Malik sat at the kitchen table with his mother. She was reading mail, her glasses sliding down her nose. "How's school?" she asked without looking up. "Busy," Malik said. "They signed me up for that boxing thing." She looked up quickly. "What boxing thing?" He shrugged. "Just an exhibition. It's for charity," she sighed. "Charity's good, but make sure you're not doing it to prove something." Malik thought for a moment. "Maybe I'm doing it to remind myself who I am." Denise reached over and touched his hand. "Your father used to say that before every match," she said softly. "He didn't fight because he wanted to win. He fought because he didn't want to lose himself." Malik smiled faintly. "I remember." He stood and walked toward the door. "I'm going to the garage." The sound of the heavy bags soon filled the night air. Thump, thump, thump. Each punch carried a rhythm, like a heartbeat. His form was smooth, almost elegant. Sweat rolled down his temples, but his breathing stayed calm. He wasn't fighting an opponent, he was fighting doubt. In another part of town, Ryan was at a party surrounded by his friends. Music blasted, lights flashed, and laughter filled the air. But Ryan wasn't fully there. His friends noticed he was quieter than usual. "You good, man?" Tyler asked, handing him a soda. Ryan nodded, staring off into space. "Yeah, just thinking about the exhibition," Tyler laughed. "Bro, it's just Malik, you'll be fine." But Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't shake the image of Malik's calm face from his mind. There was something about that calmness that made him uneasy. The next day at school, the coach called both boys into his office. "All right, you two," he said, looking serious. "This exhibition is supposed to be a show of skill, not a fight. Understood?" Both nodded. The coach leaned back in his chair. "I know the school's been buzzing about this, but I expect sportsmanship. Ryan, no showboating. Malik, stay composed." Malik nodded again. "Yes, sir." Ryan forced a grin. "Of course, coach." As they left the office, Ryan glanced at Malik. "You really think you can handle this?" he said. Malik smiled slightly. "You'll see." The next few days blurred by. Malik's training became routine. Morning runs, shadow boxing before class, quick workouts during lunch breaks. His teachers noticed how focused he was. He stopped reacting to whispers and laughter. He had learned to let noise pass through him like wind through trees. But that didn't mean the pressure was gone. Inside, he still felt it, a quiet weight pressing on his chest. He just didn't let it show. By Friday, the tension reached its peak. Between classes, Malik was heading toward his locker when Ryan and his friends appeared again. Ryan looked angry this time, not playful. "You think you're better than me?" he asked suddenly. Malik frowned. "What are you talking about?" Ryan stepped closer. "You walk around like you don't care about anyone, like you're above us." Malik shook his head. I don't think I'm better than anyone. I just don't need to prove myself. The crowd began to gather, sensing the tension. Ryan's jaw tightened. Say that again. Malik sighed. You heard me. Ryan grabbed Malik by the hoodie, pulling him closer. You've got a big mouth for someone who hides behind notebooks. The students around them gasped. Let go, Malik said quietly. Or what? Ryan challenged. Malik looked him straight in the eyes. Or you'll regret it. For a split second, their eyes locked, two completely different worlds colliding in one silent moment. Then Ryan shoved him backward. Malik stumbled but didn't fall. The crowd was on edge now. Some pulled out phones. Others whispered, waiting for a punch that never came. Malik straightened his hoodie and said calmly, I don't fight outside the ring. Then he turned and walked away. Ryan stood there, fists clenched, breathing hard. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispering. Tyler put a hand on his shoulder. Man, let it go. He's not worth it, but Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't shake the feeling that Malik had just won something without even throwing a punch. That evening, Malik's mother noticed the mark on his hoodie. What happened? She asked. Nothing, Mom, Malik said softly. Just some drama at school. She looked at him carefully. You sure you're okay? He nodded. Yeah, I'm just done letting them define me. She smiled sadly. That's my boy. Later that night, Malik sat in his room, wrapping his hands with care. The gloves lay beside him, waiting. He looked at the picture of his father again. I stayed calm today, he whispered. Just like you taught me. The day of the exhibition was only a few sunrises away. Word spread faster than wildfire. Everyone was talking about it. Teachers, students, even parents. The gym was expected to be full. Posters went up around the school. Charity Sports Day featuring the Lincoln Boxing Showcase. And under the list of participants, two names shone like a challenge. Ryan Carter versus Malik Johnson. Malik didn't care about the crowd or the noise or even winning. He cared about something bigger, showing himself that silence doesn't mean weakness. His father's voice echoed in his memory one last time. Real strength isn't loud, son. It's quiet, calm, and unshakable. Malik closed his eyes, breathing deeply. The world outside could laugh, shout, or doubt all it wanted. But inside him, a different kind of power was awakening, one that no amount of mocking could break. The quiet storm was almost ready to rise. Saturday morning came with golden sunlight spilling through Malik's window. The day of the charity exhibition had finally arrived. The streets outside were calm, but inside Malik's chest, his heart moved to a quiet rhythm of nerves and purpose. He had been up since dawn, shadowboxing in the garage with the door half open. The air was cool, the light sharp, and each movement cut through it like memory. Jab, pivot, breathe. Jab, breathe, step back. His father's voice still lived in his head. Don't fight to hurt, son. Fight to control what's inside you. His mother watched from the doorway, holding a mug of coffee. She didn't interrupt. She just stood there smiling softly, her eyes filled with a mix of pride and worry. You're ready, she said finally. Malik nodded. I think so. She walked closer and adjusted his hoodie collar the way she used to when he was little. Remember, no matter what happens, your strength is not in your fists. It's in your heart. Malik smiled faintly. I know, Mom. By noon, the Lincoln High gym was packed. Students filled the bleachers. Teachers managed the volunteers, and the sound of sneakers and chatter echoed everywhere. The event was supposed to raise money for local youth programs, but everyone knew why the gym was this full. They weren't there for charity. They were there to see the fight. Malik entered quietly, wearing a simple gray tracksuit, gloves slung over his shoulder. He didn't need a crowd. He needed focus. Ryan was already there, warming up in a corner with his friends, laughing loudly. His boxing gloves were new, bright red, the kind that screamed confidence. Malik's gloves, by contrast, were faded and old, but they fit perfectly, like a second skin. When Ryan saw him, his grin widened. Well, look who showed up, he said, tossing a towel onto the bench. Didn't think you'd actually come. Malik's calm gaze met his. You talk a lot, he said quietly. Maybe that's how you hide fear. Ryan's grin faltered for a second. Then he laughed. Fear of you? Come on, man. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You're gonna regret signing up for this. Malik said nothing. He just tied his gloves slowly, carefully, like someone preparing for something sacred. When the coach called them to the center, the crowd's noise swelled into shouts and claps. Teachers tried to remind everyone that this was for fun, but excitement was hard to control. "Remember," the coach said firmly, looking at both of them, "this isn't a real fight. You keep it clean. Show respect. Understood?" Malik nodded. Ryan smirked and said, "Sure, coach." The bell rang once, and everything went quiet. Ryan moved first, quick and aggressive, the way football players often do, fast bursts of energy with no patience behind them. He swung wide, aiming for Malik's chest, but Malik stepped back lightly, the punch missing by inches. The crowd gasped. Ryan came again, this time with 2 jabs and a hook. Malik ducked, slid to the side, and stayed calm. He didn't throw a single punch. He was reading him, just like his father taught him to. Ryan grew frustrated. He wanted reaction, emotion, something to feed off. "Come on," he shouted, swinging harder. Malik kept dodging, using his footwork to control the space. His movements were smooth, not flashy, just efficient. He was fighting with patience, not pride. After the first round, Ryan's face was red. He hadn't landed one clean hit. The coach raised his hand. "Time!" The crowd applauded. Malik walked calmly to his corner, breathing slow. Ryan threw down his towel. "He's running," he complained. His friends shouted encouragement from the sidelines. "Finish him next round!" When the bell rang again, Ryan came in faster, fueled by anger. His punches lost form, wild, heavy, emotional. Malik stayed calm, dodging, weaving, staying just out of reach. The noise around them faded. All Malik could hear was the sound of Ryan's breathing and the thud of sneakers on wood. His father's words whispered in his head again. "Don't let anger own the fight. Control it." Then something happened. Ryan stumbled slightly after missing a punch, and the gym fell silent. Malik had an opening, perfect, clean. His instincts screamed to strike, but he hesitated for just a heartbeat. Then he stepped forward, throwing a light jab that landed square on Ryan's shoulder, not his face. It wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to remind. Ryan froze, eyes wide. The hit wasn't powerful, but it was precise, disciplined. Malik stepped back immediately. The bell rang again. The round was over. The crowd erupted into cheers and noise. Teachers clapped. Students shouted. The quiet kid had just shown everyone something they didn't expect: control. In the final round, Ryan slowed down. His shoulders dropped, his movements grew heavy. He wasn't angry anymore, he was embarrassed. But Malik didn't gloat. He didn't smile or taunt. He stayed centered, steady, calm. When the bell rang one last time, Malik extended his glove toward Ryan. For a moment, Ryan just stared. Then slowly he tapped it back. The crowd stood and cheered. The match was over. No knockouts, no blood, no drama, just respect earned in silence. Malik didn't raise his arms or celebrate. He walked back to the locker room quietly, as if nothing had happened. Outside, the noise continued. Ryan sat on the bench, breathing heavily. Tyler came over, clapping him on the back. "Hey man, you okay?" Ryan didn't answer right away. He watched Malik leave the gym, shoulders relaxed, head high. For the first time, Ryan saw what real strength looked like, and it wasn't loud or showy. It was quiet, humble, and unshakable. Later that evening, Malik walked home under the orange glow of sunset. His mother was waiting by the porch. "How'd it go?" she asked. Malik smiled. "Good," I stayed calm. She nodded knowingly. "That's what your father would have wanted." They sat together on the porch, not talking much. The neighborhood was peaceful, the kind of silence that felt earned. Malik looked at the gloves resting beside him. "Mom," he said softly, "I think I'll join the community gym again. Maybe teach some of the younger kids," and she smiled proudly. "That's the best thing I've heard all day." A soft breeze passed through, carrying the sounds of laughter and life from nearby streets. Malik leaned back, feeling lighter than he had in months. For the first time since his father's death, he didn't feel lost. He had found his balance again. Not through revenge or pride, but through peace. Meanwhile, Ryan sat alone in his room, the glow of his phone screen dimming beside him. Videos from the exhibition were already spreading online. The comments weren't cruel, they were amazed. That new kid's unreal. He didn't even get angry. That's real discipline. Ryan watched them for a while before turning off the screen. He felt something heavy in his chest, shame but also respect. He had been wrong about Malik. He had mistaken silence for weakness, humility for fear. The next day at school, Malik walked down the hall quietly as always. But this time the laughter was gone. Students nodded at him, smiled, even said hello. When Ryan saw him at his locker, he hesitated, then walked over. "Hey," he said awkwardly. Malik turned. "Hey." Ryan scratched the back of his neck. You were good yesterday." Malik smiled slightly. "Thanks," Ryan nodded. "You didn't have to hold back like that." Malik shrugged. "Strength isn't about how hard you hit. It's about knowing when not to." Ryan stood there for a moment, then said, "You think maybe you could teach me a few things sometime?" Malik's eyebrows lifted slightly, but his smile widened. "Yeah, I think I could." That afternoon, the two of them met at the gym. The same boys who once laughed now watched with respect as Ryan learned footwork from the one he used to mock. The rhythm of gloves hitting the bag filled the air, steady and controlled. Two very different boys found common ground, not in competition but in discipline. As the days passed, something shifted in the school's atmosphere. The laughter that used to sting turned into applause. Malik had taught everyone something more powerful than a punch. He had taught them that true power doesn't need noise to be seen. And in every step, every breath, and every quiet moment, Malik carried his father's lesson with him. Not all fights are fought with fists. Some are won with peace, patience, and the courage to stay kind in a cruel world. The sun rose over Lincoln High with soft light washing across the quiet campus. The weekend had come and gone, but the echoes of the charity exhibition still lingered in every hallway, every whisper, every side glance. Malik's calm victory, his control, his silence, his grace had changed something. The boy who once walked with his head down now moved through the school like a steady flame that no one could mock anymore. People didn't laugh when he passed. They nodded, smiled, or moved aside, sensing that quiet power he carried. But Malik didn't walk differently. He didn't act proud. He didn't brag. He stayed the same, humble, polite, steady. He didn't want fame or attention. All he wanted was peace. Yet peace has a strange way of inviting new challenges. Monday morning, Ryan waited for him at his locker. Not with the usual smirk or jokes, but with a kind of uneasy sincerity. "Hey, Malik," he said quietly. Malik turned, surprised but calm. "Hey." Ryan looked down for a second before speaking again. "I've been thinking about what you said about strength not being how hard you hit." Malik waited, silent. "I want to learn that," Ryan said finally. "I want to change." Malik studied him for a moment. The old version of Ryan would have laughed through those words. But this Ryan looked different, less confident, more human. "You serious?" Malik asked softly. Ryan nodded. "Yeah, I was a jerk. You didn't have to give me respect, but you did anyway. I want to earn it now." For a few seconds, Malik said nothing. Then he gave a small nod. "All right. Meet me at the community gym after school. Bring an old shirt, you're gonna sweat." Ryan blinked, surprised by how easily Malik agreed. "Wait, just like that?" Malik shrugged. Everyone deserves a chance to start again. After school, the community gym smelled like dust and memory. Malik unlocked the door with the old key his father had once used when he coached there. Inside were rows of punching bags, mirrors cracked in the corners, and a single speed bag hanging like a forgotten heartbeat. Malik turned on the lights, the hum filling the space. "This place hasn't changed," he said quietly to himself. Ryan looked around. "You trained here?" Malik nodded. "My dad ran it. He believed boxing could teach you how to handle life, not just fights." Ryan nodded slowly. "Guess I need that." Malik tossed him a pair of gloves. "Put those on. Let's start with the basics." The next hour was filled with rhythm, footsteps, breaths, the soft thud of gloves meeting air. Malik moved with calm precision, showing Ryan how to balance, how to breathe, how to move with purpose instead of power. "Boxing's like life," Malik said, circling around him. "If you throw everything too fast, you lose control. You have to stay patient, wait for the right moment." Ryan followed, clumsy at first but determined. Sweat covered his forehead. "Man, this is harder than I thought." Malik smiled faintly. "That's because it's not about fighting someone else. It's about fighting yourself." Day by day, they trained together. The rivalry that once defined them turned into something else, a strange kind of friendship built on mutual respect. Ryan stopped mocking others in the halls. He started listening more, speaking less. People noticed. Tyler, his closest friend, didn't understand. "Bro, why are you hanging out with him?" Ryan just shrugged. "Because he's teaching me how to be better." Meanwhile, Malik's mother watched her son change too. He came home happier, lighter, He started helping younger kids at the gym after school, teaching them how to punch, how to breathe, how to believe in themselves. One of the boys, a shy 12-year-old named Jordan, reminded him of himself years ago. Quiet, small, but full of hidden strength. Malik guided him patiently, showing him that every jab, every breath was about confidence, not violence. One evening, as Malik locked up the gym, Ryan sat on the steps beside him, exhausted but smiling. "You ever think about competing again?" he asked. Malik shook his head. "No, my dad used to say real fighters don't need trophies." Ryan laughed softly. "You sound like him already." Malik looked out toward the streetlights flickering to life. "He just wanted me to live with peace. That's enough." But fate, as always, had its own plans. A few weeks later, a poster appeared around town announcing an upcoming regional youth boxing tournament. The event offered scholarships for winners, money that could help pay for college or fund community programs. The local gym Malik trained at was one of the entries allowed to send fighters. Coach Alvarez, the old gym manager, spotted Malik one evening as he was training the younger kids. "You ever think about stepping back into the ring?" the coach asked. Malik looked up, surprised. "Me? You've got skill, discipline, and heart," the coach said. "You'd make a statement, show kids what control looks like." Malik hesitated. "I'm not sure I want to fight again." The coach smiled knowingly. Sometimes fighting isn't about winning or losing. It's about showing what's possible. That night Malik couldn't sleep. He sat by his window watching the quiet street below. Competing again felt like reopening a chapter he had closed when his father passed. But maybe, just maybe, this was a way to honor him, not replace him. The next day at school, Malik told Ryan about the tournament. "You should do it," Ryan said immediately. "You'd kill it," Malik chuckled. "I'm not doing it to win," Ryan nodded. "Then do it to inspire," Malik agreed. The next few weeks turned into long nights of training, alone in the gym, surrounded by echoes of his father's memory. Every time his fists met the heavy bag, he felt closer to the man who taught him everything. And every time he rested, he heard his father's voice reminding him, "Balance your body, balance your soul." When tournament day arrived, Malik's mother stood in the crowd with Ryan and a few of the younger kids from the gym. The arena lights were bright, the smell of sweat and adrenaline heavy. Malik stepped into the ring not with pride, but with peace. His opponent was fast, loud, confident, the kind of fighter who wanted to dominate the moment. But Malik's calm presence drew all eyes. From the first round, it was clear who understood control. Malik didn't rush. He moved like water, smooth, deliberate, patient. Every dodge, every counter, every step was poetry. The crowd began to cheer not for violence, but for the discipline of grace. When the final bell rang, the judges raised Malik's hand. The crowd roared. Ryan clapped the loudest, shouting, "That's my brother right there." After the fight, reporters asked Malik how it felt to win. He smiled and said, "It's not about beating someone. It's about proving to yourself that you can stay true to who you are, no matter what's thrown at you." The cameras flashed, but his mother's tears were the only lights that mattered. Later that night, back at home, Malik placed his small gold medal on the table beside his father's old gloves. He whispered, "We did it, Dad." His mother hugged him, saying softly, "You showed them what strength really is." Ryan texted him later that night, "You didn't just fight. You changed this place." Malik smiled, looking out at the night sky. The same stars that once looked distant now felt closer. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't the kid who kept his head down. He was the young man who lifted others up simply by standing tall. The next morning, Malik returned to the gym, medal tucked into his bag. He greeted the kids waiting by the door with a smile. "All right," he said, clapping his hands. "Who's ready to learn?" The younger ones cheered, gloves in hand. Ryan laughed from the corner, already warming up. The rhythm of punches filled the air again, not the rhythm of anger, but of purpose. In every movement, Malik felt his father's presence, not in the ring, but in the way he lived, in the peace he carried, and in the hope he gave others. The quiet boy who once walked alone had become something bigger, a symbol of what happens when you choose discipline over rage, patience over pride, and compassion over revenge. The morning after the tournament, Malik woke up sore but at peace. His knuckles ached, his shoulders burned, but his heart felt weightless. The gold medal lay quietly on his desk, gleaming faintly in the sunlight. He didn't see it as a trophy. It was a reminder of a promise he had kept. A promise to his father, to his mother, and to himself, to fight with control, not anger. At breakfast, his mother placed a plate of pancakes in front of him. "You look tired but happy," she said, smiling. Malik grinned. "I feel like Dad would have been proud." She nodded softly. "He would have been more than proud. He would have said, 'See, you don't have to shout to be heard.'" Malik chuckled. That sounds like him. Before he could take a bite, his phone buzzed with messages. Ryan had sent a video link. The clip of Malik's final fight was already going viral online. The caption read, "The quiet boxer who fought with calm." Thousands of views, hundreds of comments. People were sharing it across social media, not because of the punches he threw, but because of the way he carried himself with discipline, grace, and empathy. By the time Malik got to school, the air felt different. Students who barely noticed him before were now coming up to shake his hand. "Dude, that was amazing," one said. "You're like something out of a movie." Malik just smiled and thanked them quietly. Ryan walked up behind him, grinning. "See? Told you you'd be famous." Malik laughed. "That's not what I wanted," Ryan smirked. "Yeah, but maybe it's what people needed." A week passed and life slowly returned to normal, or almost normal. The school's principal invited Malik to speak at an assembly. It wasn't something he had expected, but she said his story could inspire others to rise above hate and bullying. Malik hesitated at first. "I'm not good with speeches," he said. The principal smiled. "Just tell your truth. That's all you need." When the day came, the gym was packed again, just like it had been for the exhibition. But this time there were no gloves, no ring, just Malik standing on the stage, microphone in hand. For a second, the silence felt heavy. Then he spoke. "A few months ago, I came here as the new kid," he began. "I didn't talk much. I thought being invisible was safer. I was wrong." He paused, scanning the crowd. Ryan sat in the front row, nodding quietly. "I learned that silence doesn't mean weakness," Malik continued. "Sometimes it's the beginning of strength. I also learned that people laugh when they don't understand something. But that doesn't mean you have to hate them back. If I had let anger control me, I would have become the person they thought I was. Instead, I chose to stay calm, and that made all the difference." The gym was so quiet that even the hum of the lights above seemed to pause. "If you ever feel small," Malik said, his voice steady, "remember that peace is a power too. You can't control what people say about you, but you can control how you react. That's where real strength begins." When he finished, the applause filled the room like thunder. Students stood, teachers clapped, and even the kids who once mocked him now looked at him with admiration. Malik smiled humbly and stepped down from the stage. Ryan met him halfway, patting his shoulder. "You just changed this whole school, man." Malik shook his head. "No, we did." After the assembly, the story spread beyond the school. A local news channel ran a segment titled, "Teen Boxer Teaches Lesson in Strength and Respect." Reporters visited the community gym, interviewing Malik and Coach Alvarez. Malik didn't talk about winning fights. He talked about helping others. "Everyone has a storm inside them," he said to the camera. "You can let it destroy you, or you can learn to move with it." The video reached more people than he could have imagined. Messages poured in from parents, students, and even other boxers. Some thanked him for inspiring their kids. Others shared their own stories of bullying, telling him how his calmness gave them hope. Malik read every message, humbled by how far his quiet story had traveled. Meanwhile, Ryan had changed too. He started volunteering at the same gym, helping Malik teach the younger kids. He became patient, gentle, and protective, especially toward those who reminded him of his younger, arrogant self. The two of them worked side by side, guiding the next generation. It wasn't about who was stronger anymore. It was about who could lift others higher. One evening after closing the gym, Ryan and Malik sat outside on the steps watching the sunset paint the sky in gold and orange. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Ryan asked. Malik smiled. "All the time." Ryan kicked a pebble across the pavement. "If you'd hit me that first day in the cafeteria, none of this would have happened." Malik laughed softly. "Maybe not, but then we wouldn't have learned anything either." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Ryan said quietly, "Thanks for not giving up on me." Malik looked over, his tone sincere. You gave yourself the chance. I just showed you the way. As weeks turned into months, Malik became more than just a student. He became a mentor. Teachers invited him to mentor other schools about discipline and resilience. Parents brought their children to his gym telling him, "We want our kids to learn what you teach." But Malik never let pride get in the way. He always repeated one sentence his father used to say, "A good fighter builds others, not his ego." One night after everyone left the gym, Malik stayed behind. He stood in front of the mirror, gloves on, sweat dripping from his forehead. He looked at his reflection and saw not the quiet boy who once walked with his head down, but a man who had learned to stand tall through humility. "You did good," he whispered, as if speaking to the memory of his father. He turned off the lights, locking up the gym, but something stopped him at the door. In the faint light, he noticed the old photo of his father still taped to the wall, his gloves raised, smiling proudly. Malik reached up, touched the photo gently, and whispered, "Thank you." The next morning, a letter arrived from a local youth foundation. It was an invitation, offering Malik a scholarship to study sports psychology and youth mentorship. The foundation wanted to support his dream of turning the community gym into a proper youth training center. Malik showed the letter to his mother at breakfast. Her eyes filled with tears. "You're doing what your father always wanted," she said softly. Ryan found out a few days later and threw him a surprise celebration at the gym. The kids made a banner that read, "Our coach, our champion." When Malik walked in, the room burst into cheers. "You didn't have to do this," he said, smiling. "Yeah, we did," Ryan said. "You showed us what fighting really means." That night, as the lights dimmed and the kids left, Malik and Ryan cleaned up together. "So what's next?" Ryan asked. Malik thought for a moment. "Teach more, help more, keep learning. There's always another kid who needs to know they're stronger than their pain." Ryan nodded. "You think you'll ever go pro?" Malik shook his head. "Maybe someday, but right now I want to build something that lasts longer than fame." He looked around the old gym, the cracked mirrors, the faded walls, and smiled. "This place saved me. I wanted to save others too." Outside, the city was quiet. The stars hung above like silent witnesses to everything Malik had overcome. The boy who was once bullied, mocked, and underestimated had turned his scars into lessons, his silence into strength. He wasn't just a fighter anymore, he was a teacher, a leader, a symbol of what self-control and kindness can build in a world that often confuses noise with power. And as he walked home under the streetlights, gloves slung over his shoulder, Malik whispered to himself, "Peace always wins in the end." The months after Malik's viral story brought changes no one could have predicted. The quiet boy who once walked the hallways alone was now the heartbeat of his community. The gym that had been half empty was now alive every evening with the sound of laughter, gloves hitting bags, and the thump of sneakers on worn floors. Children who once wandered the streets after school now came to train, to learn, to belong. Malik stood in the middle of the gym one afternoon, hands wrapped, sweat shining on his skin. Around him, kids practiced footwork drills while Ryan called out encouragement. "Keep your guard up, Jordan. You too, Samira, remember, light on your feet." Malik smiled as he watched them. These were the moments that mattered most. Not medals, not cameras, but transformation. When the bell over the door jingled, Malik turned to see Coach Alvarez walking in. The older man grinned. "You've turned this place into something special, son." Malik laughed softly. "I just gave it life again." "You built the foundation?" Coach nodded, his eyes proud. "You and your father would have made one hell of a team." The mention of his father brought a brief silence. Malik smiled gently. "He's still here. Every time someone chooses discipline over anger, I feel him." That night, as the last of the kids left, Malik locked up and sat alone on the ring apron. The gym lights cast long shadows across the floor. He could still hear his father's voice from years ago. "Son, when you teach someone to throw a punch, make sure you also teach them when not to." Those words had become his compass. But peace rarely lasts forever. One evening, a group of older teens came to the gym. They weren't there to learn. They were there to test Malik. Their leader, a tall boy named Darius, leaned against the wall with folded arms. "So you're the calm boxer everyone talks about," he said mockingly. Malik wiped his hands on a towel and replied evenly, "You looking to join or just talk?" Darius smirked. "Heard you think you're untouchable." His friends laughed behind him. Ryan, standing nearby, stepped forward. If you're here to start trouble, you can leave. Darius's eyes flicked toward him. Relax, I just want to see what the hype's about. Malik didn't raise his voice. Everyone's welcome to train, he said. But if you step into this gym, you leave your ego outside. The words hung in the air. For a moment, it seemed like Darius might cause a scene. Then unexpectedly, he smirked. All right, show me what you teach. Over the next week, Darius kept coming back. At first, his punches were wild, angry, like someone trying to hit away his pain. But Malik didn't give up on him. Control, he kept saying. It's not about who hits harder. It's about who stays calm longer. Slowly, Darius began to listen. The other boys noticed the change, too. They started staying after class, helping clean up, asking Malik questions. What started as defiance turned into respect. One night, after everyone left, Darius lingered behind. Why didn't you kick me out when I first came? He asked quietly. Malik shrugged. Because someone gave me a chance once. Darius nodded, his voice low. Nobody ever did that for me. Malik smiled faintly. Now someone has. So make it count. Weeks later, the community held a Youth Champions event to honor local mentors. Malik didn't expect to be nominated, but when his name was called, the applause shook the room. He walked to the stage, humbled, wearing his old gray hoodie instead of a suit. When he spoke, his words came from somewhere deep. This isn't about boxing, he said. It's about giving people a space to feel seen, respected, and safe. When you believe in someone, they start believing in themselves. After the ceremony, Darius approached him with a folded note. I wrote this for you, he said shyly. Inside were simple words. Thanks for showing me that peace can hit harder than fists. Malik smiled, folding the note carefully and tucking it into his pocket. As winter approached, Malik balanced school, work, and training. His scholarship offer from the Youth Foundation was now official. He'd be heading to college in the fall to study sports psychology, but he had mixed feelings about leaving. One evening, while sweeping the gym, Ryan noticed his quiet expression. You're thinking about leaving, he said. Malik nodded. Yeah, I don't want this place to fall apart. Ryan grinned. Then don't worry, I'll keep it going. You've done your part. Now it's my turn. Malik smiled gratefully. You sure about that? Ryan nodded firmly. You taught me everything I need to know. You trusted me when no one else did. Let me give that back. On Malik's last night before leaving for college, the gym was packed. The kids had decorated it with banners and balloons. Someone had written in big red letters, once a fighter, always a teacher. Malik stood at the center of the ring, overwhelmed. You guys didn't have to do this, he said with a laugh. Ryan grinned. Yeah, we did. You're the reason half of us believe in ourselves now. Coach Alvarez handed Malik a small box. Inside were his father's old stopwatch and a folded note that read, Keep time with purpose. Malik blinked back tears. I'll make him proud, he said softly. The coach placed a hand on his shoulder. You already have. The next morning, Malik boarded the bus for college. His mother hugged him tightly. You've done more good than most people do in a lifetime, she whispered. Malik smiled. I just followed your advice. She laughed gently. And your father's heart. As the bus pulled away, Malik watched the city fade into the distance, the streets, the gym, the faces that had become his second family. He felt both sadness and hope. The journey wasn't ending. It was evolving. At college, Malik quickly became known not for his strength, but for his compassion. He volunteered at local youth centers, teaching kids the same lessons his father taught him: patience, control, respect. His calm voice and steady presence drew people in. Professors admired his discipline. Students sought his advice. He never bragged about his past. When people asked how he learned to stay so composed, he simply said, Life taught me to breathe before reacting. Back home, Ryan kept the gym running. He sent Malik photos of the kids training, the cracked walls newly painted, the words Fight with Peace painted in bold letters across the entrance. Malik smiled each time he saw them. One day during his second year at college, Malik received a message from Darius. It read, Coach, I just won my first amateur match. I kept calm, just like you said. Thank you for believing in me. Malik sat back, smiling through tears. He realized his father's legacy had outgrown both of them. It had become a chain of strength passed from one soul to another. Years later, when Malik returned home, The gym was still alive. Ryan had expanded it, adding a classroom and small study area. The walls were filled with photos. Kids smiling, hands raised, gloves on. In the center hung a framed picture of Marcus Johnson, Malik's father, with a plaque beneath it that read, "He taught his son to fight for peace, and his son taught the world." Malik stood in front of it quietly, his reflection overlapping his father's face in the glass. He whispered, "We did it, Dad." Behind him, laughter echoed, Ryan, Darius, and a new generation of kids sparring lightly in the ring. Malik turned, his heart full. The story had come full circle. The bullied boy had become the guide, the gym had become a home, and strength had found its truest form, not in fists, but in forgiveness. He smiled and called out, "All right, everyone, let's get back to work." The gloves thudded against the bags again, a steady beat of hope filling the air. And for Malik, it was music, the sound of peace winning over and over again. Years passed, but the story of Malik Johnson continued to ripple quietly through the city like a steady heartbeat. What had begun as a simple act of restraint in a high school hallway had become a lesson shared in classrooms, gyms, and living rooms far beyond Lincoln High. Teachers used his video to start conversations about kindness. Coaches quoted his words to restless athletes. Parents told their children that real power is calm. Malik never sought any of it. At 23, he returned to his hometown after finishing college, diploma in one hand and his father's old stopwatch in the other. The air smelled the same, warm asphalt, faint salt from the nearby river, but the streets looked brighter. Murals covered the walls near the bus stop, one of them showing a young boxer with his hands lowered and his head held high. Underneath it, painted in white letters, were the words, "Fight with peace." He stood there for a long time, smiling quietly. The mural wasn't just of him. It was of every kid who had ever been laughed at and decided to stay kind anyway. When he walked into the gym again, the sound hit him first. Gloves on heavy bags, sneakers squeaking. The rhythm of training filling the space like a song he'd missed. Ryan was in the middle of it all. Older, stronger, calling out counts to a group of teenagers. 3-2 slip, again! The moment Ryan saw him, his face lit up. "Look who finally came home," he shouted, jogging over. They hugged like brothers. Malik laughed. "You kept the place alive." Ryan grinned. "Nah, man, you did. You just didn't know how far the echo would reach." Malik looked around. The once cracked walls were now painted in bright colors, each corner filled with life. The office door had a new sign, Lincoln Community Boxing and Leadership Center, founded by Malik Johnson. He blinked in surprise. "You named it after me?" Ryan shrugged, smiling. "You taught me to lead with humility. This is me returning the lesson." Over the next months, Malik settled into a new rhythm. He taught boxing classes in the mornings and gave motivational talks at local schools in the afternoons. He didn't talk about punches or victories. He talked about patience, respect, and the power of staying calm in a world that rewards noise. Every story he shared carried the same thread, that compassion could rebuild what anger destroyed. One winter afternoon, while sweeping the gym floor after practice, Malik heard a knock on the door. A small boy stood there, maybe 10 years old, clutching a flyer in his hands. "Are you Coach Malik?" the boy asked nervously. "My mom said you teach people how not to be scared." Malik crouched down to meet his eyes. "What's your name?" "Evan," the boy whispered. "Well, Evan," Malik said with a warm smile, "the first thing I'll teach you is that courage doesn't mean you never feel afraid. It means you stand tall even when you do." The boy smiled shyly and stepped inside. In that instant, Malik felt a familiar presence, his father's voice echoing through the years. "You'll know you've done your job when the next generation walks in without fear." News of the gym's work continued to spread. Local journalists began calling it the House of Calm. Former students returned to volunteer. Even Darius, now grown and working as a counselor, came back on weekends to mentor the kids. Together they built something bigger than boxing, a safe place where every child could learn discipline, confidence, and kindness. But Malik's journey still had one more lesson waiting. One evening, Lincoln High invited him to deliver the commencement speech for the graduating class. Standing backstage, he could hear the hum of hundreds of voices. It felt like stepping into another version of his past, the same gym, the same nervous energy. But now he was on the other side of it. When his name was announced, the applause rolled like thunder. He walked onto the stage, paused, and smiled. "I used to be where you are," he began. "Except I wasn't sitting in the front rows. I was sitting in the back trying not to be noticed." The crowd chuckled softly. "Back then I thought silence made me invisible. I thought being quiet meant I was weak. But I learned something different. Silence can also mean focus. Calm can also mean strength." He told them about the day he almost let anger win, and how choosing peace instead changed his entire life. "People will test you," he said. "They'll laugh, doubt, and sometimes even push you. But how you respond, that's what defines you. You don't have to raise your fists to prove your worth. You just have to raise your values." When he finished, the students stood and applauded. The principal handed him a plaque engraved with a single line, "For showing that true strength is the courage to stay kind." Later that night, Malik sat alone in the empty gym, the plaque beside him. Outside, the streetlights glowed faintly through the windows. He reached for his father's stopwatch, pressed it gently, and let it tick in his hand. Click, click, click. He thought of every moment that had brought him here, every laugh that once hurt, every step that rebuilt him, every student who now looked to him for guidance. Ryan walked in quietly and leaned against the doorframe. "Still keeping time?" he asked. Malik smiled, "Just listening to how far it's come." Ryan nodded, his voice low. "You know, I used to think fighting made me strong. Now I realize it just made me loud. You made me stronger by showing me quiet." Malik chuckled softly. Quiet has its own kind of thunder. They stood in silence for a while, watching the last light fade from the sky. The world outside moved fast, but inside that gym, time seemed to slow. A few years later, Malik's story became part of a documentary on youth empowerment. It wasn't dramatized or exaggerated, it was simple, honest, and deeply human. The final scene showed him teaching a group of kids, saying, "The world might laugh at you today, let them. Just remember, tomorrow your calm might be the reason someone else finds their strength." When the film premiered, Denise sat in the front row, tears glistening in her eyes. She squeezed Ryan's hand and whispered, "He did it, Marcus. Our boy kept his promise." Back at the gym, Malik hung a new photo on the wall beside his father's, this one showing a crowded room of smiling kids wearing mismatched gloves, holding up a sign that read, "Peace wins." He looked at it and smiled. The journey that began with humiliation had ended with healing. The bullies had become friends. The scared had become brave. The silent had found their voice. Before turning off the lights, Malik stood in the middle of the ring one last time that night. He closed his eyes, breathing in the quiet air, and whispered, "To every kid who feels unseen, don't lose heart. One day your calm will speak louder than their noise." He stepped out of the ring, leaving behind a legacy far greater than trophies or fame, a legacy of patience, dignity, and strength built on compassion. And as he locked the door behind him, the gym lights flickered softly like a heartbeat that would never stop.